All right, we're recording. All right, what is your full name?
Vitaliano Joseph Bruno Jr. But I don't use the junior and I don't use Vitaliano. I go by Vito, V-I-T-O.
When did you start going by that name?
What?
When did you start going by Vito?
I started Vito when the nun in, I think, first grade or so gave us a card with our name on it. And Vitaliano was too big, so she cut it to V-I-T-O. And
That's
rest of my
awesome.
life, I was Vito, even though my birth certificate shows Vitaliano. Next question.
Do I have permission to record this interview?
Yes,
What are the names of your parents, 5 brothers, and 2 sisters?
my parents, my mother was Rachel Catherine Riccadelli Bruno, and my father was Vitaliano Bruno. And you want to know, my 2 sisters were Rose, was the oldest in our family, and Florence was number 5 or 6, something like that. Florence. And then my brothers were Peter and Joseph, older than me. And then younger than me was Tony, Anthony, Arthur, and Bobby. Total of 8 children,
Oh, yeah.
6 boys, 2 girls.
And what brought your parents to New York?
My mother was born there, and her parents owned property there, and she went to high school, to grade school there, and I guess she only had 1 year of high school. But she spoke Italian, she wrote Italian, and it's amazing for only a freshman in high school, the education that she really had.
Yeah.
My father was illiterate. He couldn't read or write. My mother was the brains. She read
Huh.
reading and writing.
How did they meet?
They lived within a couple blocks of each other. My mother lived on Walnut Street, and my father lived on Cooper. They were about 2, 3 blocks apart.
So your father was a boiler engineer. Do you know where he worked?
He worked at a paper mill on the Hudson River in South Glens Falls, and that paper mill changed hands about 3 or 4 times. At one time, it was Veldon. Another time, it was Marionette. Another time, it was International. And the paper mill would change hands. When my father retired, it was in the property was Scott Paper Company. That's where he retired from. But all those other companies have preceded him.
All right.
Hey,
Your mother, she was a homemaker, right? Did
The
she?
homemaker with eventually 8 children.
Oh, did she enjoy being a homemaker?
It was a real chore for her when she had, at one time, she had 8 children, and it was a tough job. And that was her full-time job from all morning, night, noon. She was on duty 24 hours a day.
Oh my. Did she still work even though she had to
She
raise
did not work. She was a house mother, and she was in the home. And I was the 4th child, so at one time she had 4 children, then 6, then 7, then 8. And the eighth child was born in a hospital. All the rest of us were born uh, at home on Walnut Street in Glens Falls, New York.
did all of your brothers attend the same school in Glen Falls?
We all attended St. Mary's Academy, which was a parochial school, and it went from kindergarten to 12th grade. We got 13, and we were all in school at the same time, except that my brother Tony, who was just behind me, quit school in 8th grade. He needed to go to a tech school, but they didn't have tech schools at that time. And he ended up being a mechanic and pretty wealthy, and he worked for the school garage, and he took care of school buses, and he scheduled the school bus schedule and all that. He was a very successful citizen, but he quit school. He never graduated. My father thought, boy, you're going to have dire consequences, no high school
Huh.
diploma. but he ended up pretty wealthy, and he ended up owning a gas station. He did repairs and sold gasoline, and then he ended up working for the South Glens Falls School District as the chief mechanic.
What was an average day like for you in grade school?
In grade school, we went through reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we'd have a short period, but we would start every day with a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. And at that time, I thought that every school did the same thing. But as I grew up, I find out everybody didn't pledge allegiance every day, and everybody didn't say a prayer to start the day. But at the parochial school, you always opened with a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. And then the rest was reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we'd have spelling bees, boys against the girls. I would always go down after 2 or 3 words. I wasn't much of a speller, so I didn't help our cause much. And we did arithmetic and history and English. And English was difficult because at home we still spoke Italian a lot. And it hindered me, and English was one of my toughest subjects as a result. But by the time I graduated from 8th grade, I received a American Legion Award for excellence, and they gave one to the top boy and the top girl. I don't know who the girl was that year, and I was the top boy with the highest grade in our regions.
Did your mother speak Italian?
Did what?
Did your mother speak Italian?
Yes, fluently, and wrote it.
Oh, wow.
She would have immigrants that would come to our house, and they would have my mother read them their letters from Italy, and my mother would read them. And then she would get out paper and pencil, and they would dictate a response, and my mother would write it in Italian and mail it to Italy, to the part of the family that was still over there. And one woman would always have to bring something to my mother, so she would always go to the playground, pick dandelion. When I see her out there picking dandelion, says, "Oh," my mother would put the dandelion in the soup. God, it was potatoes, all kinds of stuff in there, but part of it was dandelion. And that's one way that the woman who didn't have much to go, money in those days, would pay my mother for her effort in responding in Italian to Italy.
Did you participate in any sports or activities in grade school?
In grade school, we had intramural. I remember 7th grade, we had basketball and volleyball were the 2 big ones. We did a little bit of soccer, softball, and pitch and throw, running, racing, things like that.
What were you the best at? What was your favorite
I
sport?
was good at running, and I could run the 100-yard dash pretty fast.
Oh, yeah.
In the top 3 on that if we had a race. And eventually I became a ping pong player later on. That was when I was in high school.
You still play ping pong to this day, right?
Yeah, and I beat everybody, and I was the top ping pong player till you came along and beat me. And then your brother Brett beat me.
Yeah.
I could beat your dad and granddad.
Yeah, you can.
Ping
All right. So what activities did you participate in with your brothers when you were not in school?
What was that, honey?
What activities did you participate in your house with your brothers when you were not in school?
Only time I participated in sports with a brother was in high school. My brother Joe and I were on the football team.
Oh.
And Joe played baseball also. And I was I was a year or 2 behind him in school. So we were on the same team, and I was usually second string, and he was first string varsity usually. And he did baseball and football. I did baseball, football, baseball, and basketball. And then during the year, we'd have a volleyball tournament. And my freshman year, we won the championship in the school, and we beat the seniors, and we were freshmen.
Nice
And
job.
That was really a feather in our cap
Yeah.
to do that. It was just amazing. I don't know how we did it. But anyway, we ended up winning over the seniors in
Did
volleyball. It was volleyball. In grade school, in seventh grade, I always played center in basketball because I was 6 feet tall. I was one of the tallest guys around because everybody else was still 4 or 5 feet growing. Well, I never grew anymore, and everybody caught up to me by the time we got in high school. When I got in high school, I didn't play center anymore. I played forward on the basketball team.
did you and your siblings have any hobbies, chores, or jobs that you guys all enjoyed to do?
The what was that again? What hobbies?
Yeah, did any of you or your siblings have hobbies, chores, or jobs that you enjoyed?
Oh, I don't know. We enjoyed sports was our favorite pastime, and I don't know what time frame. And when we were youngsters, we played kick the can, and we played hide and go seek, and we did all the normal games that kids do. And we participated, and with such a big family, we're all participating in something at the same time. But usually, we weren't on the same team with my brothers. The only time we were together was baseball and football with Joe. And Joe and Pete and Rose have passed on already.
Was there any chores that your parents made you do at your house that you disliked?
That what?
Any like chores around the house, like mopping?
Oh, chores! Oh my gosh! My mother always needed help when we had 8 children, and we still had toddlers, and we had my brothers were working in a grocery store, and they worked in the vegetable department, and Joe and Pete. So I was in charge of dishwashing, and I had 2 assistants, my brother Tony, younger, and my sister Florence, younger than he. And I would wash the dishes, and they were wipers, so they would wipe them, and then we stack them and put them away. But every time we finished dinner, there was no dishwasher. The dishwasher was me and my 2 siblings there, brother and sister. And we also, for Sunday dinner, we had chicken most of the time because my father raised chickens. So Tony and Florence and I got to pluck the chickens, and then my father would cut them up. My mother would cook them. And it was sort of a family thing for our Sunday dinner to have chicken and pasta. And if we didn't eat all the pasta on Sunday, we ate it until Wednesday, until it was almost all gone. We very seldomly threw anything away. Most everything would go into leftovers, and sometimes into a soup. And the soup was not just liquid soup, it was a stocky soup that would be like a dinner.
Growing up, do you remember any notable new inventions or breakthroughs that occurred?
The what?
Growing up, do you remember any like new inventions or breakthroughs that occurred?
I guess during my lifetime, one of the biggest things and earliest things that I remember was the salt, the vaccine for polio. And that came out in I think it was 1965. Jonathan Salk invented the polio vaccine. And the biggest example of polio was FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, both of his letters. He had polio in both of his, but he was a president 4 times. And if he lived, he might have been a president the 5th time.
Yeah.
He was very popular, but he had 2 stiff legs, and his son always had to help him and with a cane for him to get around.
Do you remember when he died?
What?
Do you remember when Roosevelt died?
Yes, I remember. It was a sad time. And he was a pretty popular president. He brought us out of the Depression and took us through World War II, most of it.
Do you remember the end of World War II? What was like America like after the war?
Well, I remember when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, I was at the Rialto Theater, which is gone now because of urban renewal. And I was in the orchestra on the 1st floor, and my wife was up on the balcony in the 2nd floor. And I can't remember the movie we were watching, but the movie stopped, and the manager of the theater came out with a megaphone, floor model, and he announced that the Japanese, this was about 2:30 in the afternoon, and he announced that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. Now, you mentioned at the end, people were driving around the city blowing car horns and yelling and screeching. But one of the biggest things I remember was when I got home and my mother wasn't there, she was at church, and the women had gone to church to thank the Lord that the war was over. The war was only over in Europe, and that was VE Day on, I think it was May 1945. And I remember, talking about World War II. I guess maybe that influenced me in my career, is that I grew up during that period. That was my high school period. And I got a mental block here. I don't know why. What was the next question? More on World War II. World War II, I said I was in the theater with and I think the attack on Pearl Harbor brought the country, the United States, together like it had never been together before. Everybody came together and collected scrap so we can melt it down into weapons and shared food. It was just a bringing together against a common enemy. And it was a wonderful, wonderful time, because we had one purpose, was to win the war and then go on. And that happened for Europe in 1945, and then the Japanese later on. And my father didn't go into service. He served in World War I. My brother Pete served in World War II. And my brother Art served in Germany after I had a tour there. And my brother Joe was in Korea in 1953 when the United Nations forces, and the North Koreans signed a truce, and he was in the 25th Infantry Division. Well, joining ROTC, I had 4 years of college, and they let me have that. I didn't get drafted. And when I finished college, I was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Army. And I wasn't called for active duty until 1955. And in the meantime, I had graduated and I got married, and I was married 5 months. And I was called to go to Korea to the 24th Infantry Division in 1955. The 25th had gone back to Schofield Barracks. And I like to clip to make from here to eternity, but that's only a joke. But Joe received a Bronze Star, and he was light heavyweight division champion of the 25th Infantry Division when he was over there in Korea. The 24th had gone back to Japan to retrofit. They got pretty beat up there in Korea on the march back to Busan. And then when they broke out, they were there when the breakout.
Yeah, we can go into Korea a little more later in the interview.
Okay, good.
We're going to finish up some questions about high school now.
Okay, go ahead, son. What is it? What's the next question?
We were just going to ask, what was high school for you like?
What did I what?
Like, what was high school like for you?
Well, for me, I thought it was great. We were always ready to get out of school when the school year was over and go into summer vacation. We always look forward to that. But by the time summer was over, we're already go back to school and get into sports and stuff like that. School was sort of the central part of your life. Everything revolved around that. Maybe it does the same thing in your life. You had the sports would be baseball in the spring and or football in the fall, and then basketball during the winter inside, and then baseball in the spring breaking out. And that sort of was the way things ran around there. Normally on a Friday night, the YMCA would host a dance for the Glens Falls High School and St. Mary's Academy. And then there was another school with St. Alphonsus, was a parochial school. It had two parochial schools in a small town, and more than we have today. That school, St. Mary's Academy today, is just goes to 8th grade. It doesn't go in. When I went there, it was from kindergarten to 12th grade.
You mentioned dances for high school. What were those like?
On Friday nights in high school, I divulged from that. I diverted. The YMCA would host a dance, and most of the kids dance. Well, I went and played ping pong. We would have some real. One of the guys I played ping pong with was he got drafted and put in tour in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And he was the post ping pong champ. And that's who I learned ping pong from. He would spot me 20 points and beat me 21 to 20. And we played, we would bang that ball around. And I would be standing maybe 4 or 5 feet back from the table, and we would be banging that ball back and forth. And
did you have any jobs in high school?
Basketball was big, and baseball, I couldn't hit the ball, so I quit baseball in my senior year, and I delivered ice. And mentioning ice, my brother had an ice route that he had gotten, and he needed help, so I would do the ice, deliver ice for him in the summer. In my, I think my junior and senior years, we delivered ice. During the war, they didn't make refrigerators; they were making tanks. So we had an ice box, and in upstate New York, in the wintertime, we used the outdoors on our back porch as our refrigerator. And during the summer, my mother had a ice box that would hold 100 pounds, and she would put a 25-pound cake of ice in it. And we never lost much food because we would always eat it within the day, and that refrigerator would keep it for a couple of days. We never had a problem with anything spoiling, and I don't recall, but during the summer, we had ice, and during the winter, they cut ice. And one winter, I worked, my college vacation coincided with the time to cut ice with the Hovey Ice Company. And I worked, and the first time I was in the ice house and caught a cake of ice, it yanked me off of my feet and down the ice house. I went sliding down, and you had to dig in and put a hook in that cake of ice and swing it, and then people would position it and put sawdust on it. And then in the summer, we would take that ice out, cut it up, and deliver it. And but then when the war ended, pretty quick, the ice business started going, and the refrigerators instead of tanks were coming out. So any other questions? Or
Yes. Do you remember your grandparents or great-grandparents?
the what?
Do you remember your grandparents or great-grandparents?
Both of my great-grandpas were gone. I remember one my grandmother on my mother's side, Florence Riccadelli, and she had a large family too. And her boys worked. They didn't go to high school. They worked collecting garbage. And their uncle, because their father had passed away, had a contract with the Glens Falls city for collecting garbage, and he would collect the garbage in the city, and there wasn't that much garbage like there is today, and trash. And he would go and screw it in his farm and turn his hogs loose on it. He raised 400 or 500 hogs, it seemed, during the war. And he had a farm, and he grew corn. And one of my first jobs, just to go back a little bit, was that I got paid for was to carry a bushel. He would go and harvest his corn, and he was getting older, so I would go out and carry the bushel, and he would fill the bushel with corn. Then I go empty it. And then when we got done, we would go down and sort the corn. You had to be careful for corn borers and throw, you know, I would get to carry corn home that had bug in it, and we cut the bug out and then cooked the corn. But the good years, he would put into dozen bags, and then he would take it down and sell them to the local stores. And that was my first job with getting paid. And he would take me out and pick me up with my two uncles at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I wouldn't get home till 6 o'clock at night. But I wasn't working all that time. A lot of time I would go around throwing stones and walking up and down. He would give me some small chores around the farm to do. And then he would go out and peddle his corn, and then he'd come back and do it again. And I did that for, I don't know whether 1 or 2 years, maybe my freshman, sophomore years.
How much did you get paid?
$13 for a whole week.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't work Saturday or Sunday. It was a 5-day week. So it was a little over $2 a day, not an hour. You know, now they're talking about $15 an
Yeah,
hour.
it's much different now.
I was lucky if I could get $1. And one of my first jobs, to go back a little bit, was working in a self-service laundromat. And I guess I can't remember whether I got 75 or 98 cents an hour. That was pretty good. And then I was pretty punctual and I was a good worker. And my name came up to the local grocery store meat manager, and he hired me to do the meat packing. The self-service was just coming into vogue, and he had a self-service counter. And he hired me for $1, $1.25. And I went there because it was a raise. And I would work during my holiday, and my college holidays coincided with the busy times for the meat bar room. You know, Thanksgiving, you had a Thanksgiving vacation and you had to sell turkeys. And then Christmas, the same thing. You had a big Christmas vacation. And so I would get that. And during the summer, when his butchers and some of his counter clerks would go on vacation, I would fill in for them. And that was my next best job. And then the job before that was delivering ice. I got $24 a week working from 7 to about 5. And that was a 5-day a week. We didn't work on Saturdays and Sundays. Those were our days off. And sometimes a holiday would be in there. We bounced around a lot. I put in 25. I ended up making a career in the service because after ROTC and my tour in Korea, I found that I was suited for that, and I enjoyed it. And when I came home, I picked up my wife and we moved to Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, and we enjoyed it there. We didn't have children. We didn't have children for 4 years. My wife was getting upset that we haven't had any children yet, and she's talking to her doctor, and her doctor says, "Yes, Lona, I hear you, but you're talking to the wrong man." That's just a little humor in our talk here.
Wait, so your wife?
That was when we were in Arkansas, and that's where our first boy was born in August. I can't even remember the year anymore.
She's from Glens Falls too, right?
Pardon?
Your wife, Lona, she's from Glens Falls too, right?
She was from Glens Falls, and while I was in Korea, she worked in the maternity ward at the Glens Falls Hospital for 16 months.
When did you meet her?
I met her in our freshman year in high school. Our parochial school had 2 classes of 35 students each, but we didn't intermingle that much. You mostly did things with people in your class. And but in our freshman year, the classes got dumped together, and some of the outlying parochial schools sent in students, and we had 2 classes in our freshman year. My wife and I ended up in the same class. For 8 years, we were in different classes, and we really didn't know each other. But we got.
So
So you went to grade school together too?
Pardon?
You went to grade school together too?
Yeah, we were in grade school. She came to St. Mary's Academy in I think 4th or 5th grade. I started in kindergarten, And I remember my mother took me the first day, and then my brothers and sisters would take me and bring me home. And that was that. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah. So after high school, did you go to college?
Yes, I went to Siena. I graduated in 1950, and I started Siena in September of 1950. One of the things that strikes me about Korea is I was delivering ice on the 25th, I think it was the 25th of June, 19, I can't remember the year. Anyway, I had the radio in my ice truck on, and they interrupted to announce that the North Koreans had invaded South Korea. And it was the 25th of June of, I guess it was 1950. And I said, oh my God, I'm draft bay. And I think that might have caused me to get into ROTC because my brother Joe, being there in the 25th Infantry Division, just as the war was winding down, said, Vito, you're coming over here, so get in ROT. It's better to come as an officer. So that caused me to get into ROTC. And I ended
That's
up.
what you did after college. You joined ROTC.
In a career of 25 years.
Did you have to go through any tough training in ROTC?
I went we did military training. It was twice a week, and we did close order drill. No matter what you do in the service, you always got to be able to march and stay in step. So we did a lot of marching. Most of it was calisthenics. And
what was harder, the mental aspect
learned
of
to be
training?
an artilleryman. And when I left college, I was I could be a cannoneer or a chief of an artillery gun section. So I was already partially trained. And then when I got married and before I went on active duty, I had a 12-week course for second lieutenants in artillery, which got you in through the basics, and then you materialize, did the rest of your career in the service. Next question.
Do you remember making any friends while in military training?
All my military friends have either preceded me or are other places. Normally, we were changing station every 2 or 3 years. So you made a lot of friends in the service, but they were spread all over. And then as time went on, you lost them. I spent a lot of time at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and that's at Lawton, Oklahoma. And that's where the artillery school is. And I went there for school about 3 times. And I was a station there once in the school. I was also an instructor at the Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, for 3 years. And that was our best family tour because most of the students had families, and they had a long course which went from fall to summer, and then the people would go on to military assignments from there.
How old were you when you went to Korea?
I graduated, let's see, it was, what year was it? It was 1955. And when I graduated high school, I was 18, and I went on 19 on the 30th of June, so I was 19. So you want to know what year I went to?
Yeah, how old were you when you went to Korea?
I'm trying to think, 20 or 21.
Was that a younger age for going into like Korea, or was that on the older end?
Oh no, there were a lot of the draftees were 18 and 19. A lot of the kids that didn't go to college or didn't get into ROTC they got drafted and they went over there. And most of the people responded to the draft and went and did their duty and came back. My brother Joe did. He put in, I was trying to think, he put in 16 months over there in the 25th Infantry Division.
So you were in Korea 16 months.
16 months, the first tour. My second tour was they had cut it down to 13 months because of Vietnam. That was the short tour for Vietnam. And when I came back home, my wife and I had been married 5 months, and we were married 21 months, and 5 of those we were together, and the other months we were separated. I was in Korea, and so we were married 21 months when I came home, and we were still newlyweds.
Where were you stationed?
And then when I went on active duty, the president of our class was going into the Navy, and he had gotten married, and his wife was Lona's, my wife's maid of honor, and Ed was the president of our class, and he was my one of my ushers at our wedding. And they had got married, and I had just returned from my tour in Korea, and we met in New York. So we went to dinner a couple of times together. And then his first tour duty was to go to Puerto Rico.
Huh.
It was great, but he was in the Navy. And I went to Korea, and we lived in tents and in the foxhole. The difference in careers.
Where were you stationed in Korea?
I was stationed at Munsan-e, and it was just north of the Panmunjom, where they did a lot of the negotiations. And along the perimeter, we had a forward observer. I was the forward observer for an infantry platoon. And the thing still had bunkers and sandbags and all that. But I've seen it on TV sometime. Now it's one of the places they always take people that visit Korea to go look through the demilitarized zone, which is 1,000 meters each side toward North Korea and 1,000 meters from South Korea.
So where were you stationed to the 38th parallel?
That was when I was a second lieutenant. That was along the DMZ. The next time I was an artillery battalion commander, and I had one battery across the Imjim River. And that Imjim River was a major obstacle in the summer. During the monsoon season, it was 33 feet deep. And during the hot season, the water would run off. You could have a pontoon bridge across, or you could drive across it at times. But it was amazing. It had a couple bridges. They had Freedom Bridge. And to digress a little, my brother Joe was there and watched the first truckload of repatriates. The North Koreans had captured some U.S. troops, and when signing the truce, we exchanged prisoners. And there was a railroad trestle bridge that connected North and South Korea around, right about at the 38th parallel. And my brother Joe sat there and watched the first truckload of returning prisoners to the U.S. And I had gone across that bridge numerous times when I was there with my battalion. I had a battery of artillery on the north side of the Imjim River, and there was a brigade of infantry, and I provided a battery to support that brigade. And I had 2 more batteries, artillery batteries, south of the Imjim River, which was a major obstacle along the 38th parallel.
What was the overall atmosphere like in Korea? Were you constantly on edge, or could you tell like there were certain times you could kind of be relaxed?
During the rainy season, most of the roads would wash out and have to be rebuilt, and had a lot of flooding. And but then when I went there a second time, all those roads were paved and the place was pacified. Seoul was rebuilt. Seoul was destroyed and was being rebuilt when I was there. In 1955, things were quiet. We still had some casualties. We had a patrol in the DMZ that got ambushed, and all the people were killed while I was there. And
Was your mindset any different going into your first tour in Korea than your second?
was what?
Was your mindset any different? Like, how'd you feel going into your first tour versus your second tour?
I didn't have any problem with where they sent me. I was a career officer, and wherever my duty was, that's where I would go. And I didn't have any problem with that. Sometimes I could put in a druther, and sometimes they would listen to it, and sometimes they wouldn't, and they would put you where the need of the service was. So that's about it. What else?
So what was it like going into Vietnam?
Vietnam, when I was there in '71, was in the time of truce. I could go down in Saigon and have dinner, and it was sort of a ceasefire, and I wasn't there for the end, but I was there during one of the most pacified times, and it was just normal duty. The difference between Vietnam and Korea, in Vietnam you had strong points around. In Korea you had sort of like World War II, where you had a front and you had a line, and you had the forward edge of the battle area, was similar to World War II. But in Vietnam it was totally different in that it was points, like islands here and there, and most of those islands would have artillery in it that could reach out another 7 to 10 miles. And infantry would go out, and you had airlifted infantry, the air, fly them in choppers and land them and fight, and then pick them up and take them away. And you had helicopter evacuation, which we didn't have as much. You had it was starting in Korea, and it was really perfected in Vietnam.
Did
Could
you
you tell any?
meet new in Korea and Vietnam?
What was that?
Did you meet any new people that you were friends with, or
I'm not.
did you meet any new friends in Korea or Vietnam?
Don't go toward your speaker. Sit back and ask me the question again. I got my hearing aids on, but I didn't get it.
Did you meet any new people in Korea or Vietnam?
Oh, a lot of people. In 25 years, I moved sometimes with my family, and sometimes they were just short tours where unaccompanied tours. And we moved about every 2.5 to 3 years. At the end of my career, I took all the assignments together, how many times I moved, and it came that I moved an average every 2.5 years we moved. And, we didn't have children for 4 years. So my wife and I was in Korea, and we were married 21 months. And then the next month we were at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. And at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, my wife was a registered nurse. She was had a BSN nursing from St. Rose College. I graduated from Siena, and they were sort of like sister schools right around. She was in Albany, and I was in Loudonville, New York, just outside of Albany. And that's about it. I don't know. What else?
Did you meet any like brothers in service when you were in Vietnam or Korea?
No, Art and I Art was in Europe, and I can't remember where I was. I guess I might have been in Korea for a second tour, and we did not meet because I couldn't get away to see him.
Would you write any letters to your brothers? Would you know where they were?
Yeah, we didn't correspond that much. Usually, you correspond with your wife and your mother and to the family, but not to each one.
Yeah.
Really.
How would you know that they were even alive?
Well, Art wasn't in combat. He was in Europe, and Europe has been pacified since World War II. And Joe was in Korea, and for that period, until they signed the truce, it was a little touch and go. But his wife would keep us informed. And you had the newspapers, and you could read what's going on.
What was the airborne like in Vietnam?
The airborne was at Tan Son Nhut, right at Saigon there, and that was they had a airborne school. They had to train people to be airborne to go into the unit. And I think they had a 3-star general, I can't remember his name, commanding the division. And usually it's 2 stars, but the general that was commanding had been there so long, and he was 3 stars. He was a lieutenant general. And he commanded the division. Had 3 brigades and the service brigade, and they would respond to fires wherever. But the things, like I said, my tour was during a pacified tour before the end and after the initial fighting.
So could you tell any immediate differences between Vietnam and Korea?
Immediate, yeah, the big differences were the way you fought it and the way the troops were lined up. And that there was the point, and intelligence always played an important part of combat, how you would react. But most of my career, I was peacetime. I was in Korea after the truce twice, and I was in Vietnam during, I guess we had a lull or a truce. I can't remember what it was, but I do remember going downtown in Saigon to have dinner. And
You remember when Saigon fell to the Viet Cong?
I was at home then. I can't remember where I was. It was a sad thing.
Yeah.
You know, the South Korean, the South Vietnamese, the ARVN just got overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They got overwhelmed.
Did you feel any different than when you went to Vietnam versus when you returned home?
When
How was your experience returning home from Vietnam?
I didn't have any problem. I had to get reunited with my wife and family. My wife would get the kids all corralled and dressed up and head out to dinner, and I just tag along. I finally had to say, "Hey, how about me?"
Were you
She learned to operate the family without me.
Yeah.
I had to learn to operate the family with me.
Huh.
And that was between us. It wasn't much of a problem. But we discussed it, and we took care of it. No problem. We grew the kids. We got 10 grandkids we're very happy with. Our children were all well educated. They all graduated from college, all 5 of them. That's that lived.
How did you feel with the people that didn't agree with the United States effort in Vietnam?
I had a difficult discussion with my own sister, and she was anti, and I was for. And I'm always going to go with the country. I object to much. I have a job to do, and I'll do it wherever you send me. And that was sort of my attitude. And in retrospect, many years, and this is a touchy area, your opinions change, and I'll keep it to myself.
So has your opinion changed about the war in Vietnam since has your opinion on the war in Vietnam changed from when you got back till now?
Yeah, it did over years. I was wondering if it was necessary, but it's done, and I'm not going to restate it.
So you talked about how you moved from station to station every 2.5 years.
Yeah.
What do you think was your favorite place for raising a family where you were stationed? Fort
Leavenworth, Kansas was the best place, and next Fort Sill, Oklahoma. But
Do you have any reasons why they were your favorite places?
Fort Sill was the artillery school, and Fort Benning, Georgia was where the infantry school was. So depending on what your branch was, then you'd have a druther. I liked Fort Sill in Oklahoma. We enjoyed it there. And
Was it difficult?
Fort Leavenworth was the best family post because it catered to families, and officers went there when they were majors and senior captains and lieutenant colonels. And then by that time, you had a family. And so it was more conducive to a family.
Was it difficult for your family?
Sports program, I was assistant baseball coach for the league. John played third base and Christopher played outfield, and the boys played sports and I would participate. And then one year I was an announcer for baseball at the Fort Leavenworth. We had a tournament there, a baseball tournament, brought in some of the towns around, sent teams in to play.
John and Chris are your sons, correct?
Pardon?
John and Chris are your sons, correct?
I can't understand.
Where was John born?
John was born, the only one born in Glens Falls, New York. He was born in the hospital that Lona worked in years before. And he's the only one born there. Elizabeth was born in Fort Worth, Texas, when we were at defending Carswell Air Force Base, air defense. That was my only air defense tour. And Heidi was born in Germany. And Christopher was born at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And Stephanie was born at your mom was born at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And that hospital has been raised and a new hospital has been built there. It was an old World War II hospital. And most of the Fort Benning or Fort Belvoir was World War II Cape Hearts. Has a lot of on-post housing. That was our tour in DC was a good tour, also a good family tour. And I was at the Army Map Service at that time. It was located over on MacArthur Boulevard.
Wait, so you talked about playing ping pong at dances in high school. Did you have time to play ping pong or any activities in Korea or Vietnam?
Well, when we were in Korea, I was one of the top ping pong players, and all the lieutenants would try to beat me. I was lieutenant colonel, and I would beat most of them. And we had a ladder, and I was number one on the ladder. Here at Falcons Landing, I was number 3 on the ladder. We had the barefoot kicker, the guy that kicked the ball barefoot. I forgot what school he played with.
Wake Forest, I think.
Which one?
Wake Forest.
Wake Forest, yeah. Ed Ladd, he's the barefoot kicker. He's number 1 ping ponger. And then we had an Air Force Colonel Lee, and he's 2. And then I would be nip and tuck with a woman who is 92 now, and she doesn't play ping pong anymore. I don't play ping pong anymore either. It's just you play at a pace you don't want to fall down. And
yeah.
To break something at the older age. But I still played ping pong up to a year or 2 ago. And that was the sport that carried me all the way through life. I wasn't much of a swimmer, but ping pong ended up with my athletic. I can still play a little bit, but I can't cover as much as I did. And I played golf, but I never was very good. I always shot around 50 for 9 holes.
Oh yeah. When did you start playing golf?
I started playing golf. So I had an operation on my back. I had a compressed disc and I was having back problems. And the doctor operated on it because apparently I had a pinched nerve or something. And I never had a problem again. He said, "You'll be playing golf here in a year." I said, "Well, I don't play golf." Well, the kids heard that and bought me a set of golf clubs. And from then on, I played golf. That was near the end of my career. And when when I started that, I was either a major or a junior lieutenant colonel.
What year were you done with the military? Finally retired?
What year, what?
Did you retire from the military?
June 30th, 1980.
2 days after my birthday.
June 30th is my birthday. It was a good time to finish my career because for taxes, it was a half a year. That last year, you had to figure half on active duty, half off.
So when you got back, did you still keep in touch with any of the people that you served with?
I didn't have much contact after you retire. Everybody goes to different parts of the country, and you stay in contact with a few of them for maybe 4, 5, 6 years, and then little by little, our careers and our we're all different grades, and everybody in a different part of the country would lose track of each other, little by little. I still have one friend that's a high school friend, and he was the president of our senior class. Who was in our wedding, and the person we met that was going on active duty when I was coming back from my first tour in Korea at Fiore. And I can't remember. I think he's 88 years old, and he lives here in Fairfax County. And we're in the same high school class. He was the president of our senior class, and he lives here. His wife has passed away, and my wife. So there's 3 of us from the class of 1950 St. Mary's Academy live here in Northern Virginia. Isn't that something?
That's great. What are the chances?
And we're survivors because our class had 2 classes of 35 or 70 students, and I don't know if there's 3 or 4 of us left, 5. Over time, everybody just sort of started passing away.
Wait, so you currently live at a nursing home for retired military, correct?
What?
You currently live at a nursing home for retired military, correct?
I'm not. I'm in independent living.
Yeah.
My wife is in the nursing part of this facility, and this place was built in 1995 and opened in 1996. We're just getting ready to celebrate our 25th anniversary, and it was developed by Air Force officers.
Have you met people in Falcons Landing who have served in Vietnam and Korea with you?
No, nobody that I served with. Most of the people here are Air Force, and the next largest group are Navy, and then Army, and then some small groups of Coast Guard and CIA. And at first, this was developed and it was filled up with Air Force people, retired Air Force people. But as the services got smaller and the population out there was smaller, now we take in civilians, I guess, GS-14 and them. What else do you have, Brian?
How do you think your life would have been different if you didn't never join the military?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would have spent most of it. I was looking at maybe going into the insurance business with a friend, and our neighborhood, the guy that had most of the insurance business was retiring, and I was going to go into business with him, selling life insurance and other insurance. But I enjoyed my tour in Korea and my tour, and I decided that I wasn't going into service. And I informed him. He went into the insurance business, and he was pretty successful at it. We were going to be partners, and he was a year or 2 ahead of me.
What business did you pursue after your military career?
After military, I'd gotten a master's degree and that's my, see that behind you next to the wall? Is that my plaque or yours? I can't remember. But anyway, I got a master's degree in management, and that's what I worked at. I was in the law firm, and I was an executive assistant to the director of operations.
How long did you do that for?
I did that for 13 years. Aaron Fox, Gittner, Plotkin and Com was a big firm. It was one of the top 10 large firms in the United States. And
was that a big difference?
Their main office was Washington, had an office in Maryland and one in New York.
Did you have a tough time translating from your military career to a job in a law firm, or did you enjoy it?
No, I was in a small law firm, and then I went to the larger firm. And the small law firm, I was the office manager, and I did a little bit of everything, hired, fired, and operations, personnel, and I did almost all of it. And then I went to the big firm, and then I was mostly in operations, support and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that too, and it paid well, and it paid for the college for my 5 kids.
Yeah.
And my wife worked during that period for the visiting nurse of Northern Virginia.
How did your wife feel about when you were gone in Vietnam and Korea?
Well, she closed ranks and took care of the family. And after I went on one of my tours, I can't remember where I was. Maybe it was the transmission went out on the car. She had to get a new transmission. She had 5 kids on her hands. Boy, I'll tell you, she was quite a woman. I digressed, but she taught medical and surgical nursing at the Spark School of Nursing in Fort Smith, Arkansas, when we were at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. And she was a good instructor. One of the things I remember, her class on Christmas came and caroled us. She was a very popular nurse instructor with those students, and they came and did Christmas caroling. And they came and sang for outside our apartment. Spontaneous. We never knew they were coming.
So your wife, Lona, she was a nurse. And
She was a great nurse. Very good.
her daughter, Stephanie, my mom, even became a nurse. Do you think?
Mom is a nurse, and your mom went on to be a nurse practitioner, which is a little higher. Lona was just a registered nurse. And Lindsay, our first grandchild, is a nurse practitioner. And Riley, Chris's second child, I think is going to be a nurse. I don't know. She's at the University of South Carolina, the Gamecocks there. And she's taken nursing. My wife influenced the kids more than I did. John's a CPA, and I was economics and did a little bit of all that. And Christopher's a computer geek, and Heidi was a house mother with 3 kids. Her daughter's in med school. She's going to be a doctor. Your cousin, Samantha, she's up in Long Island at the med school up there. So how are we doing, son, on time?
Oh, we're good. I think we're just about finished.
I've enjoyed talking with you. You've allowed me to bring up some old times. I try not to get into anything too critical.
Oh, no, thank you. You did.
Yeah, no, thank you.
But I enjoyed it and enjoyed answering your questions.
We enjoyed listening.
Pardon?
We enjoyed listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
But we need another month. When you get to be my age, it's mostly talk. I'm 88. I'm 89, and I'll be June. I'll be 90. And I ran into at a patio when I was over visiting my wife. She's in the nursing part of our facility. I met a woman over there. It was 101, and
Oh my!
Her husband was an Army guy. He was a cavalry officer from Kingston, New York.
Oh.
And that's another story. Kingston got its name because I think there were a lot of Tories there during the Revolution. But we don't want to get into those things.
Yeah.
We have different opinions. Been my pleasure. You're both great, and you had some good questions. I hope I answered them adequately based on.
You did.
You did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, here, I'm trying to get this. Here we go. There. That's my script. And you.
Oh, nice job, Grandpa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You did a great job getting it on the air. I didn't think you were going to make it, son.
All right, so I'm going to stop recording. Is there anything you want to say?
I'm very good with the computer, but you're great.
Is there anything you want to say?
So thank you for interviewing me. I enjoyed it. Y'all have a good time.
Thank you, Grandpa.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Oh.